The greatest Christmas pageant ever is Dallas's first foray into kind of this new media revolution, right? We've seen him obviously on The Chosen doing amazing stuff with this TV show, but now this is his first movie since the success of The Chosen, and it's really interesting to see the numbers behind this. Is it doing well? Is it flopping in the theaters like his previous movie? Well, let's check it out and see as we dive into the understanding of what is going on with the best Christmas pageant ever in its first opening weekend. So let's jump into this first and see how it's doing. Here we go.
So how's the best
first
Christmas?
thing? Let me back up here. First things first, Dallas posted a New York Times article. It says the best Christmas pageant ever review, how it got so great. And it says the film, based on the 1972 children's book by Barbara Robinson, tells the story of an unlikely group of kids stunning a small town for the holidays. So the New York Times and many other places of publication have talked about this movie, and generally the consensus is that it's actually pretty good. So let's hear Dallas's thoughts on this in the middle of opening weekend. I believe this was posted yesterday.
So how's the best Christmas pageant ever doing? I know you're wondering because 7 years ago, at this point, I was thinking I might never make another movie again because of the failure. Well, I'm happy to tell you that that's not going to happen this time around. The best Christmas pageant ever is doing very well. Had a great start yesterday. In fact, we were number one on Friday. Now, that won't last. We won't finish at number one for the weekend. We probably won't be able to beat Venom. That yesterday always gets a boost because it's the opening of our film. But we are neck and neck with Heretic, the Hugh Grant horror film. Now, nothing against that movie, but our movie's a little bit different. And so if you want us to finish second, if you want to make sure that we get even more publicity and that we can really get in front of more eyeballs and get this great message out to the world, in addition to the fact that we've got an 89 on Rotten Tomatoes, even the New York Times liked us. Can you believe that? That's going to help convince people to watch it when they might not have otherwise. So if you've got friends who you're considering inviting, make sure they see it this weekend so we could finish number two. That'd be really cool. Thanks so much for your support.
Yeah, so go check it out. Obviously, I think it's very good. I've talked about it already. I may do a more fuller review here in this video, just talking about what I think of the actual movie, kind of diving into it. But I think it's very good overall, and we'll get into some of the nitty gritty here in a second. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff right there. Another article that he posted later from Deadline says Venom's Last Dance does 16 million Christmas pageant, and Heretic in fierce battle for number two with 11 million plus a piece for Veterans Day box office. And so he says, interesting headline, can we win this battle? So he's trying to win past Hugh Grant and get into that second position there. Now, on the other side of things, this is Rotten Tomatoes. This is kind of like the main place where a lot of movie reviews live or die. You get a really bad TV show or a really bad movie, and generally the critics will either heavily like it while the audience hates it, or the critics will hate it while the audience loves it. And that's how a lot of polarizing movies go. This movie I don't think is really polarizing at all. And of course, with the poll of the Chosen fans and the support from that community, we've always expected that the audience scores would be high for this one, which obviously it is. We can see here the critic score, which is this tomato right here. The critic score is 89%, which is relatively high, I would say, for pretty much any movie that's getting into the box office. That's a really, really great sign. About 90% of the critics really thought this was fresh or it was good. And then 98% of the audience watching says that it is good, that it's passing, basically. Let's look at some of these reviews as we go into it. Here's some of the critic reviews. We see Adam Graham says, Jenkins and his trio of screenwriters are able to slide their message in without clobbering viewers over the head with it. And the movie manages to exist in a world that comes across as relatively modern. Let's look at this here. Right here. Over the head with it, a movie manages to exist in a world that comes across as relatively modern, but isn't tied to any particular era through clothing or technology. So the movie does feel like they exist somewhere in maybe like the 80s or 90s, is what it feels like to me. And so I think that's correct as well. I don't think it feels out of place. I think it does feel like a classic Christmas movie, like we've seen with A Christmas Story and some of these other things that we've seen throughout it, basically. Here's some audience reviews here. Jesus came for all of us, including the herdmans. Of course, that's kind of the premise of the movie itself. How many of us need to hear that? Hear that Jesus is all inclusive, timeless message, complete with laughter and tears. Really cool. Dorothy says the mom's willingness to step out of her comfort zone and not giving up on the herdmans, also reminding us the true meaning of Christmas. Here's another one. Great show for the family. So good. Starts off with a little slow, but both of my daughters, 13 and 17, said it was incredible by the end. Perfect movie to usher in the holiday season. Great story and acting. Wonderful true story. Brilliantly told. Acting was top notch. Great holiday movie to take your whole family to. And there is an epilogue at the end, which I don't think is included in the book. So this is an addition, an epilogue at the end that was an addition to the book. And of course, it's not perfect, a perfect mirror, I should say, to the book itself. My wife said it's about 60 to 70% the book, and then some added things or some things taken away just to make the movie feel a little bit smoother there. Then we have the box office numbers here. Hey, I just wanted to interrupt real quick and say, if you like content like this and you want to see more and more of it, there's two main ways that you could really help. One is to subscribe. And this is, I know, an underrated way of helping, but I promise you, the bigger this channel gets, the more opportunities I will have. And secondarily is financially. If you want to go to snipesupport.com, you can pledge $5, $10, or $25 to help us monthly continue to make money and not worry about the views on a video or how well or how bad YouTube treats us. This is really a huge lifesaver for us on this channel. Without our Patreon members, we really couldn't be doing what we're doing here. So thank you so much to all those that are subscribed over there and that help us on a monthly basis. You're amazing. Anyway, if you want to join over there, snipesupport.com. The link is down in the description down below, and we'd really love to have you over there as well. There's a lot of extra perks and all that stuff. Anyway, let's get back to the episode here, which I wanted to pour into here, which I thought were quite interesting. The box office numbers for I keep on saying the greatest Christmas pageant ever because it feels better to say. I don't know why. The best Christmas pageant ever. If we go down here right at today, basically earlier this morning, I think is when these numbers came through. They were at $11 million gross, which means that they've surpassed the budget for the movie. Essentially, the budget for the movie was around $10 million. And so obviously that doesn't mean that Dallas puts $1 million in his pocket, but it does mean that, you know, everybody basically sees some benefit from this now. They are profiting from this movie and being able to do stuff beyond the budget of the movie itself. And so that's very, very cool to see. And I was interested in where this ranked kind of in the zeitgeist of Christian films overall or faith-based films. So I don't know if this is trustworthy or not, but this is just on Wikipedia, the kind of listings of all of the faith-based films that have come out, basically ever. And so here is the opening weekends for all those films. Obviously, Passion of the Christ is number 1 at 83.8 million. Then Son of God, 25. Heaven is for Real, 22. I Can Only Imagine, 17. The Shack, 16.2. Jesus Revolution, 15.8. Miracles from Heaven, 14.8. War Room, 11.4. The Star, 9.8. And then God's Not Dead, 9.2. So with the numbers that we have so far, we're expecting this to land between 11 and 15 million, somewhere in there. So it should be above War Room for sure after this weekend. And then it could possibly even get past Miracles from Heaven, which would put it in like the seventh-ish spot in terms of opening weekend of all time for these faith-based movies, which is very, very cool to see. And in terms of Lionsgate's faith-based movies, it would only be behind The Shack and Jesus Revolution, which of course stars Jonathan Rumi in that one as well. That was a very well done movie that came out last year. So yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting overall. The movie itself is beautiful. So let me talk about just my thoughts on it overall. This section is going to be a little bit spoilery, so if you want to skip past it, you can. Although I'm not sure I could really spoil this movie. Generally, you're going to get the gist of what's going to go on by watching the trailer and different things like that. There's no huge like twists or anything like that in the movie. It's generally what you think it is going to be. Although I will say, while it is generally what you think it may be, it's not cheesy to the point of like, oh, this is just a boring movie, it doesn't hold anything. I think it does go about things in a way that is probably unexpected for most people. Couple things that I love about the movie. Number one, there's no central idea of like Santa Claus in this movie. Santa Claus is really not mentioned anywhere in the movie. While Christmas is obviously the main theme of the movie, they stick to Christmas trees and presents and Jesus. And so the Christmas story itself is really the heartbeat of this movie overall. And so I love that about this movie. I think a lot of Christmas movies obviously go towards the Santa Claus idea overall, and they really cling to that no matter what. And so it's really cool to see a movie that doesn't do that. It's really cool to see a movie that is completely focused on the true story of Christmas. Secondarily, I will say one thing that is super impressive in this movie is the child actors. Throughout all of it, especially the Herdmans, but throughout all of it, I will say especially Imogen here. She's kind of like the main character. There's a couple main characters that are kids. One of them being Imogen here, and she's of course like the leader of the Herdman family, the leader of the kids there, and she is kind of the boss of a lot of these situations throughout the movie. She is amazing. The actress who plays her did an amazing job, and all of her siblings did an awesome job, and all the rest of the kids. I don't think there's really one kid that I would pick out that's like, that was not a great performance, that was a poor performance. I think they all did amazingly well, which is rare considering children are often hard to work with, right? They say in show business, don't work with animals or children because they can obviously be really hard to work with and not really understand what you're trying to get them to do and all those different types of things. But the children in this movie in particular, very good. On the chosen side of things, we have 3 chosen actors in this one that are semi-prominently positioned. So of course we have Kirk Waller, who plays the pastor of the church in this movie. We also have Liz Tabish, who plays the mother of one of the children in the movie. Very different role than Mary Magdalene. It's really cool to see her in that role. She's almost like an antagonist in parts of this movie, although she doesn't have a really big role overall. Then we also have Vanessa Benavente, who plays Mother Mary. In this movie, she's playing the teacher for the school. And so she has one of the Herdman kids in her class that is just kind of crazy, and she has to deal with them from time to time. She, as well, like everybody else in this movie, has a bad image, mental image of the Herdmans, but most people by the end of the movie kind of come around and see who the Herdmans actually are. So really beautiful. Here's the thing that I love most about this movie, and I talked about it a little bit in my previous video. What I love most about this movie is the explanation of the gospel in a way that many people don't see it today. I think the way that they did this movie was so beautiful because Imogen in particular, I think she is going through a walk of salvation that I think most people in modern church today don't really see. And that's sad because I think that there's a beauty in this conversion, right? We don't really like that word. We don't really talk about that too much because we don't want to like shove our Bibles down someone's throat, right? Which I totally understand. But for Imogen here, she experiences God in a way that is so unique and rare, I think, in today's world that it's really beautiful to see it played out on screen. She doesn't just go from, like in a Hallmark movie, right? You're expecting the main bad character to kind of go from, oh, they're bad, and they experience some stuff, and then automatically they switch, and they're just good from then on, right? That's not who the Herdmans are. In this movie, you see this slow, gradual come to Jesus type moment where they encounter God, and they never question that God is real or that this story is real or fake or anything else. They just take it at face value that this is real, that this is what happened in history. Not only that, but they actually research to see what else happened during this time. They've never been read the Bible story. They've never been read the birth of Jesus, right? And so they don't really know what they're getting into. The Herdmans are not there to be a part of this play to begin with. They just kind of get sucked into it because Imogen is encountering God for the first time in a way that is so interesting to watch. If you're looking at this from an adult point of view, right? I think kids are going to love this. They're going to see the story behind it. They're going to see that, the roles are kind of reversed. The people that you would imagine are good are kind of the antagonists, and the people that you imagine are bad are kind of the protagonists. I think kids are going to understand that, and they're going to see the journey that's going through. And it's a fun movie, right? There's a lot of laughs and fun times. I think adults, though, particularly Christian adults, right? They're going to see this movie in a new light that I think is really needed in today's world. And I think that is why it doesn't really matter how well this movie does in the opening weekend, because this movie has the potential to become a classic Christian movie in homes. Different than, let's say, A Christmas Story or some of these other movies that are worldly to an extent, right? They have things like, the pressure around cussing and different, seductive things in the movies, right? That are very worldly. Whereas this movie is completely centered around the Christmas story, around the birth of Christ. And so that historical understanding of that is really interesting to see, in seeing Dallas Jenkins, and Ryan Swanson, the different people that are working on this movie, to see them come in and write a script that not only is fun, not only brings you to tears, but also shows you the history of the birth of Jesus, I think is really interesting to see. And so for Imogen in particular, her character experiences God, sees that he's there, and immediately she has this hunger in her in order to dive into the rest of the story. So my favorite scene in the entire movie is when they go to the library. None of the Herdmans obviously have library cards, right? So the main character, I think her name is Beth, the other child, she's trying to figure out how to deal with the Herdmans, because the Herdmans have stolen from her. They've beat up her brother. Like, there's a lot of things that she should not like them, right? But she's kind of being forced to help them, or forced to let them have what they want. And so they kind of bully her a bit to get them library cards. And so they go to the library, and the librarian is completely confused that they're going to get library cards. But they do it. They get library cards, and the whole Herdman family goes in to basically check out any book around Jesus's birth. And so they start to study. It's so beautiful to see. They start to study Herod and who Herod is. They start to study Mary and Joseph. They start to study Jesus and the wise men and everything else surrounding the birth of Jesus. And so you see Imogen, she's not doing this out of any selfish need. She's not doing this because she wants to look good for the church people. She's doing this because she needs to know the truth. And it's so cool to see, because I've seen this, right? Only a couple of different times. One of these times is with our friend Jada. So you may have seen her in some Chosen Con stuff, or if you're a longtime fan from the Snipe Life, you may have seen her in our Friends Watch the Chosen series. Jada only came to Christ within the last 5 years or so. And so when she was finishing up her high school years and her senior year, she really had this moment with Christ that changed her completely, right? She went from, having friends that like to party and do some crazy stuff to now a person who was really interested in who Christ was and how she could live out this life with him. And so we saw that hunger in her. She had this hunger to seek Christ and to see the truth of what the world actually was. And this is such a rare thing, I think, in modern day church, to actually see someone come to Christ and have an extreme hunger for him. I've only seen it really a handful of times in my entire Christian life, right? In my entire life, I've really only seen it a couple of times. And I think that's because we so often coddle people, we're very careful because we don't want to push them away from Christianity. So we end up not inviting them in and showing them that experience that gives them the hunger, right? And so this movie is beautiful to see that. Overall, I think that's really the heart of this movie. So yeah, anyway, if you want to go see it, definitely go check out The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. I think Dallas Jenkins nailed this one for sure. Do I think it's a perfect movie? No, I would probably rate this an 8.5, maybe a little bit higher out of 10. I do think it's very, very good. I think it has a lot of rewatchability. I think you could watch this every year with your family, and it could be a great tradition for you. Obviously, there's moments that feel a little bit cheesy and things like that, but it's not anything like a Hallmark movie or anything like we've seen before. I think those moments are very like few and far between. And I think they're purposeful too. You need some like cheesy Christmas moments, right? In the show. And I think for a Christmas movie, it has to work that way, even if I don't particularly love it, right? And so I think it does work even in those moments there. So anyway, if you have seen the movie, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on it. And if you'd like to go see it, of course, go check it out in theaters whenever you can. So yeah. Anyway, we'll see you guys on the next one.